What's up, guys? Ryan here from Mud Gunner. Today I'm joined with my buddy Mason, and we are talking about Airsoft and Milsim West. This is not Airsoft, but that is.
This is Airsoft.
This looks like it's Airsoft.
That's actually lighter than this one is.
It is, yeah. He let me hold these, the two Airsoft guns we have here, and I'm like, dang, my G36 is much lighter. But yeah, this is a 5.56. It's empty for the purpose of this, but yeah. So,
it's much cooler.
Mason wanted to talk about Milsim West, which I don't know anything about other than watching videos online. I've never done an Airsoft event, so he wanted to talk about real-world applications for it and how fun it is, which I'm kind of jealous of. So go for it.
Yeah, it is both fun and not fun at the same time, like the military, much like the military.
And you pay to do it.
Yeah, I volunteer.
Well, he
to
volunteers,
help.
but most people have to pay to do it.
Yeah, not a not insignificant amount of money, and so why would you want to pay money to do this? I guess like all the other, like the famous YouTubers do. What's my involvement in this? One of my friends is a paid employee for Milsim West, and I get to assist him because he gets like a +1 basically that he can use as an employee. And so him and I have been friends for a long time. He's an old school infantryman. I did my time in the Army, but I was just a regular guy. And so he's like, hey, you want to come try this stuff? And one of my other friends that I work for here at Worst Responders, or I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not, but
You're fine.
yeah, he has been into Airsoft since he was a kid, and then he joined the military and did real life stuff. And then when he got home, he started picking it up again after he got out of the military. And so because of that, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. And so I don't pay to do the events because I'm a +1 for my friend who is an employee for them, but I don't have any monetary interest in it. They don't pay me, certainly.
Yeah.
I don't even think they know I exist.
You hang out, you help them out.
Yeah, they probably don't even know I exist, which is totally fine with me, right? So yeah, what is Milsim West anyway? I guess MSW, Milsim West. It's not your dad's Airsoft, right? Basically. It's not like what you would think where it's a bunch of little kids who their parents buy them these cheap airsoft guns for. It's a bunch of, can I say autistic on the channel?
I don't care. Someone got mad in the last video, but I don't care.
Sorry, it's a bunch of mildly autistic adults with adult money who buy very expensive airsoft guns, very expensive equipment setups, and they go out and you play war for 40 hours straight. Right, so
that sounds fun to me.
Yeah, it's not like a game. So the difference basically, Milsim West is kind of the only people doing this. There's other companies. American Milsim is a company that does Milsim events, but they do like, hey, the game goes for 10 hours, and then there's like a few hour break, and then it goes for a few hours at night, and then you go back to your room at midnight or at 1, and you sleep, and you wake up in the morning, and you do it again. Milsim West is an immersive 40-hour event where from the time the event starts until the time the event ends, you are always in the game.
Nice.
So the only exceptions are like if you have like a bathroom emergency, obviously there's porta potties, but you have to like put a thing on that says you're out of play. You can walk there, eyes down so you're not looking and trying to cheat or whatever, but you walk there, do your business, and then you come back. No. Medical emergencies and stuff obviously are
Now, if
covered,
you have to use the bathroom, do you bring your own shovel?
Yeah, no.
Or are you supposed to use the porta potties?
Well, it depends on the event.
Got it.
Right, so they do events in urban settings, which then obviously, you just go to the Porta John. But they do events in wilderness settings where there are not any bathrooms. And so it's literally
drone come at the porta potty.
It's exactly like it is in real life where we just have to dig a hole and do our business in it.
Yeah.
Or you carry wag bags with you, which are just plastic bags, specially designed biodegradable plastic bags that you do your business in, and you have to keep them.
I just went camping. I just buried it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's much easier. But yeah, and so it's immersive, and you're always in play, right? So even at like 1 in the morning, let's say you've done all your fighting for the day, and you just want to go back and you want to sleep. That's cool. But just like in real life, you have to set security around your perimeter because at any point, the enemy forces that you're facing can come up and shoot at you, right? And so everyone, or not everyone, a lot of people use night vision. They use thermal devices because, again, most of these are grown adults that do this. There are some, or they use white light too as a strategy. It just depends on what you're doing, right? Yeah. IR flashlights, lasers. You'll see here. There's a purse on here. It's a real purse. They use real purse and stuff. They use the airsoft versions too, obviously. There are some kids that do it that are younger-ish, but like we're talking 16. And
is there an age limit? I assume 16 is probably the youngest.
You could do it if you were younger, I think. You just have to have parental consent, and I don't think most kids can hang, basically.
For 40 hours,
is what we're saying,
I feel like I could have as a kid.
You probably, and now certainly you could do it.
I'd be the dummy, sneak into the base at night, get them all riled up.
And so they try not to do it too gamey like that, right? They want to keep it semi-realistic. So I spent 13 years in the military, right? And I will say after doing 2 Milsim Wests, and one of those other ones I mentioned, the American Milsim one. Milsim West is the closest that you can get to a military field training exercise without joining the military. All of the cadre, the staff that work for MSW are military veterans. Most of them with much cooler resumes than me, certainly, like Rangers, other branches, Marines, infantrymen from the Army, infantrymen from the Marines, there's Rangers, there's intelligence officers, there's all kinds of very cool people that run this. And so it's not just made up of random schmucks. They're all veterans, and they've all kind of been there and done that.
Yeah. It's like a way to like continue what you do for fun, well, not like having to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not having to really kill people, exactly,
Yeah.
which is great, right? And they just found that right now, with technology where it's at, the best way to do that and the most way to balance it out is to use airsoft guns, right? They do, however, incorporate a lot of other stuff that a lot of other people don't, right? So a big one that I thought was really neat is blank fire. You can use a blank fire gun. Mm-hmm. You just have to obviously get it approved. They have an inspection process where they check it out. All your ammunition has to be inspected before the event. Mm-hmm. Once you bring things in, like once you leave your vehicle to go to registration, you can't go back to your vehicle without being checked by cadre. And there's a lot of safety measures in place, right? So it's very safe. But you can, in fact, use blank firing weapons. And so that's where that adds another element to it, right? And they have rules for blanks, like if you get shot at by someone with a blank firing weapon, you are obligated to take cover, or to act like you are being engaged. They can't necessarily kill people, but they can hold people in place.
It's because there's no
BBs
projectile at that point.
Absolutely
all, right?
not. No projectile whatsoever. But it's just a way to like suppress the enemy, and it makes it more immersive, right? Mm-hmm. They also use pyrotechnics at the events that they're allowed to. So like flashbangs and smoke grenades that they have. They have like Tag-In is a big company that does flashbangs and stuff. IWA.
This is a smoke grenade. So.
Yeah, they do. Smoke grenades, and Ola Gay is an airsoft company that makes smoke grenades, which we talked about in another video. So you can use all this stuff at these events, chem lights, whatever. Like all the stuff we use in real life, they use at these airsoft events, right? We're talking, I mentioned the thermals and night vision already. And so I just wanted to talk about it in a video with Ryan because it is an excellent training tool if you go into it to use it as a training tool. If you do one of these events and you're like, oh, I'm just going to play it like a paintball game or something, you will find that most of the people there are not receptive to that type of thing.
Yeah. Can I see the M4?
Yeah.
So the M4A1 Mark 18.
Yeah.
The cool thing is, like, for me being an outside person, like, it is realistic in a way that you can use all your normal kit. Like, I can probably get a mag for this, put it in here, be fine. I got to leave this one at home because that's 5.56.
Yeah, right. But it'll fit. And most of these, like, airsoft guns and stuff are made to like military specifications. Cool. So like this one has a metal rail. This is not like 100% real weight because that's going to be like aluminum, lighter aluminum instead of.
You got a real Vortex razor on there, AMG.
Yep. And like, but they're metal bodied guns, right?
Yeah, I mean it feels like it's maybe 5 or 6.
They only shoot like 100 feet, maybe is about as far as you can realistically hit people. A little further, possibly. I'm not an airsofter. I've literally never done any airsoft stuff other than these MSWs. Yeah. I have an airsoft gun literally just because like 2 or 3 times a year I do these events. I don't like go to airsoft fields and play airsoft as a game. It's not my thing, right? But this is different because this is a great training tool because really nowhere else are you going to get the kind of immersion that you get at events like this. Now, obviously there's some unrealistic parts of it, like only being able to shoot at people 100 feet away.
Yeah.
So it does breed some bad habits in people where you'll see it. They'll just be like standing in the open because they know like you can't hit them from that far away. And that's obviously not applicable to real life. But if you play it like real life, when you go there to do these things, you can get a lot from these and you can learn a lot. You learn a lot about your kit and how it works for you because you're not just like, cool, I'll wear my really neat stuff like we wore in the GWOT where it's like a battle belt with a rifle mag, 2 pistol mags, and a dump pouch and maybe a med kit and then my plate carrier with like 3 mags and I'll do that for 40 hours. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. You need to carry sustainment stuff with you. You need to carry your own food. Water is provided for you. They have water points. You can refill water, but you still need to have the containers for water because you can't just like live at the water point and drink straight from this giant bin of water. Right?
Everyone wants that watering hole.
So you're running canteens, Camelbacks, Nalgene water bottles. You have to carry the water with you that you need until you can resupply it. You have to carry all your own food. They don't supply you with any food. So you're bringing MREs for 40 hours. You're bringing snacks for 40 hours. If you are one of those people that has to have coffee, you're bringing a jet boil so you can make coffee.
Heck yeah.
You're bringing a sleeping bag. You're bringing like a tarp. You can't bring tents because they want this to be like a light infantry thing. So you can't bring any kind of like main shelter things. You can rig something up with a poncho or whatever, but it's supposed to be light infantry, so you can't bring like the tents like Pogues like I did where we bring our own tents out to the field and stuff like that, where you can't do that. It's all just like sleeping on the ground. You can bring a sleeping mat or whatever. So it's very realistic. And again, you're not sleeping, I'm going to get 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep. No, man, it's more like an hour. maybe an hour here, a half an hour there, 2 hours if you're really lucky, back to back.
Now, would you say the other teams are pretty aggressive too?
Oh yeah, it really is. So the way the teams things, how it's set up for MSW specifically, I can't speak to any other things. They have predominantly 2 teams. And again, because the point of this is to be immersive and semi-realistic, there are the Russians or RUS-4, Russian forces, and then there's NATO. The neat thing about it is you're not limited to just like one thing, right? So if you want to, in NATO, for example, obviously multicam. There are uniform requirements, so you have to meet certain requirements in your uniform, otherwise you can't do the events. So if you're going to be NATO, just generic NATO, multicam and your equipment has to be some kind of color that NATO forces would wear. So like multicam, obviously Ranger green, Coyote brown, those kind of things.
Arid camo would be fine, right? I mean,
yeah, desert arid. Yeah. For your stuff, yes, but you cannot wear a uniform that's multicam arid because that's not an official camouflage that anybody in NATO uses, right? Now the exceptions
to that.
What about my green
shirt like this?
No, you'd have to wear a real camouflage uniform.
Got it.
Right. The exceptions to that are if you you have to get a squad together, and for them it's like 9 to 12 people, I think, like that. And if you can get 9 to 12 of your friends to all get together, and you're like, hey, we all want to wear German uniforms, you can do that, but you have to just get permission from them, and it has to be a full squad's worth of people. So at this recent one, there was a group of South Korean dudes who got permission as a squad to wear South Korean issued camouflage, which was very confusing because it's very similar to Russian ERD or whatever the EMR camouflage.
I'm not a camo expert. I mean, there's a lot of cool camos out there.
Yeah, but I mentioned the A word at the beginning of this. I'm one of those people when it comes to surplus and stuff, right? So, yeah. So but you have to match it to real life, right? So the South Korean guys were wearing this camouflage. There was also obviously like a Marine Corps group who they all wore their Marine Corps issued uniforms. They just had to get a full squad together to get permission to do that. And so you can do that. And then the opposite of that, obviously, is the RUS-4 that I mentioned. So that you have to wear like Russian military camouflages. It has to either be current issue or something that you can find people still using, right? So you wouldn't be able to take like your Soviet Afghan war uniform from the 80s because they're not using that anymore. But some of the stuff from like the 70s and stuff, they still use occasionally, very rarely. I mentioned the Soviet Afghan war. It's going to make me seem like an idiot because that took place in the 70s and 80s. But so generally it's not going to be that stuff because they don't use it. Occasionally, though, you can still find Russian units using older stuff. And so if you can find real sources of them doing it, you can wear that as your RUS-4 stuff. Your equipment, if you're going to be RUS-4, has to be in the Russian camouflage. So you're not generally, they're kind of discouraging it now, running around with multicam stuff if you're wearing Russian uniforms. However, Russians do use multicam, so it gets kind of confusing.
And part of it, is it because they don't want you to like mistake teammates or stuff like that?
That's also part of the fun of the, not fun, that's also part of the realism of the event though. So like when I did it this last time, let me just go over the other part first then before we jump to that.
But real fast on uniforms, if you don't have your own, do they supply anything?
Nope, you gotta bring it all yourself. And honestly now guys, like you just go on Amazon and get some cheap stuff. This is a nice one, of course, but this is just like a cheaper setup. You just find some stuff on Amazon if you don't want to spend a ton of money to get into this. You don't have to. That's why, like the first event I did NATO, because I was like, dude, I'm not buying a bunch of Russian crap to do one thing. And then I did it and was like, this is really cool. I can see myself doing it more. So then I started getting some Russian stuff so that this time I could be Russians to do it. And it was very fun. It was cool to be Russian because I did the NATO stuff in real life. So it was very neat to be the Russian guys.
I don't know if they can see the AK. Can you show them the AK?
Yeah. So this is the 103. I'm pretty sure. It's like their current issue AK that a lot of them are using. This thing weighs more than a real AK-103 with all the stuff on it. This is from a friend of mine, Matt. So it's his gun, all his stuff. This is a real purse, like I mentioned. This is a real, I don't even know, everything's in Cyrillic, so I can't tell you what it says, but real Russian optic. There's a can on it. This one doesn't do anything. It's just for looks. But it is heavy. The stock folds to the side. It's got the sights like the real ones do. So they get very into this stuff, right? Like, it's an electric gun, so you put batteries in either the stock or the forend on some of them, and you shoot it. It makes a little bit of noise. They make some that recoil. They make some powered by green gas, like this pistol that I have right here, which...
He put some gas in it.
I put some gas in just so you guys can see. There's no BBs in it. It's definitely a fake gun, but they make noise, and the slide actually reciprocates when you shoot it. So they get pretty realistic into this, yeah. One of my friends, John, the gentleman I did it with, has an AK that's electric but still has recoil. So the bolt moves and everything. It's very cool. And they're all metal. Most of these guns are all metal. It's very neat.
How much does something like this cost?
Yeah, the neat part is they're not actually all that expensive. You can get like a really, this is a really high quality stock Airsoft AK-103. And I think on Evike, which is like a big Airsoft website, also a sponsor of Milsim West, for whatever that's worth. I think they're like $400. Something
It's
like
a
that.
lot, but it's not a lot if you're.
I mean, yeah, considering a
with it.
real AK-103, well, one, you can't get one right now in the U.S., but a real one of these is what, $2,000 plus?
If you did like the Daniel Defense route, yeah,
Yeah,
but
like
you can get like a
$3,000.
cheap, inexpensive AK right now, like a real AK for $600, or you could buy one that doesn't work. You know, I get it.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
get it.
But you
So,
can't shoot people with your real AK.
That is true. So,
Well, you can, but you shouldn't. Right?
yeah,
It's bad.
For $400, you can chase people down and hunt them.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. So it can be, but you don't have to spend that much.
Yeah.
You can get airsoft guns for $150, whatever, decent quality
Now,
ones. But
if
yeah,
you're shit out of luck with your gun, it breaks. Can you just go around knifing people?
no, there's no
Demote them?
knife kills. No knife kills.
Demote.
Like a lot of people, you can bring a backup gun,
Mm-hmm.
and that you would be like, hey, sorry, this gun broke. Can I go to my car and get my replacement? And they would say, as long as it's, you know, if you're still Russian, it's still got to be Russian or whatever.
Now, can you rock an AK and like a Makarov or something?
Yeah, if you want to.
That'd be cool.
My friend John and I don't use handguns because it's a light infantry thing, and infantrymen don't generally carry handguns around with them. So it just depends on how you want to set it up. But yeah, you can if you want to. Just, a lot of people do use handguns. They also have like LSWs, we call them in the civilian world now, but like squad automatic weapons, right? So there's dudes that run machine guns. So they have saws, they have 240s, they have RPKs and PKMs. That people run as airsoft guns, and they play different roles. They get more ammunition, and you know they also regulate that because at Milsim West, it's not like, oh, I brought 20,000 BB so I can just do whatever. Yeah. You actually get issued a certain amount of ammunition, cool. And if you use all your ammunition, then the only way to get more is to either resupply with your own people, which they may not even have more, or to kill the enemy and take their ammunition. You can kill them, and when you kill the enemy, you can search them. You have to ask permission to physically search people, but even if they don't give you permission to physically search them, if they die, they have to give you like certain items. If you say, hey, I'm searching you, you have to give me whatever you have. So if they have loose ammunition, like loose BBs or BBs in a container or a loader for the airsoft mags, they have to give it to you, the ammunition. If they have like papers on them or their cell phone has like a map, like ATAC, they have to let you take a picture of that map. They have to give you your radio frequencies. If you kill a NATO dude, for example, like the last time I got this dude, and so I was like, hey man, let me see the radio. So he takes it out, and I took a picture of the freaks, sent it to command, so then we could listen to NATO radio for a while until they learned.
To tell them like, hey, I had to give up the radio.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably would, but
yeah.
Even then, even if they do, they have to stay dead for a certain amount of time or until they shotgun a water bottle if they've been killed a certain amount of times. And you get tourniquets. You get one tourniquet if you don't wear armor. If you wear ballistic plates, you get 2 tourniquets. A tourniquet just means that when you die once, a buddy can apply a tourniquet to you, and then you get to come back right then.
It's a quick revive from Call of Duty.
Basically, yes. Yeah. But then if you die again, you have to go to a casualty collection point, shotgun a water bottle, and then get your tourniquet removed, and then you're allowed to go back and fight. And so they do that because then you can actually gain ground against the other team. Whereas if people just automatically come back to life, it's just you're fighting in one place, nothing changes. But the system that they have in place means that you can legit gain ground on people before they can reinforce, and you can actually take and hold territory, which is pretty neat. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not that gamey, guys. It's pretty legit.
Now, I watched Grantham's video on it from like a couple years ago, and it seemed pretty like big space. Is that the same one that you did? Like,
I don't remember which one his video. So the 2 events that I've done now, I for the life of me can't remember the one I just did. It's in an old Air Force base in Victorville, so they call it, California. Okay. It's in an old Air Force base, so it's buildings and stuff. So that one, it's still big enough that it's like you're not going to see the NATO dudes when they're at their camp or their base, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's pretty legit for that one. But that one's still like small enough that there's a lot of action, there's a lot of fighting. The other one I did is one called Clovis, which is also in California. The one in Clovis is in an open field with like rolling hills and stuff. Okay. So you're like, it's like a square mile or whatever, maybe more. So you're like humping up and down hills to go find each other and kill each other. And that one's big enough again that you can still, or small enough again that you can still like sort of see people. But then they also do ones where there's like, they use military training sites that are miles and miles. So it's like you can go to these events and you have to like hunt people down in unit-sized groups because you don't do the lone wolf shit where you run around. Sorry, you don't do the lone wolf crap.
You could cuss. Someone just got mad about the A word. I don't care.
You don't run around like lone wolf like a game, slitting people's throats at night. Like you're moving by team size elements would be the smallest, and then squad and platoon size elements because it's like hundreds of people on each team at a time do this, right? Yeah, the last time I was there, it was I think at Victorville it was like 250 Russians and about 250 NATO. Or so on each team. So it's organized into companies and platoons and squads, right?
I picture it like Nuketown and Call of Duty. Is it like pretty
bigger?
Like do people like charge like head into the fight like that?
So that would depend entirely on what team you're on. Do the Russians do that in real life? Yes. And so do the Russians do that in this game sometimes? Yes. Do NATO forces generally run in giant mass waves to fight the enemy? No, that's not how we fight. So you wouldn't do that if you were NATO. And so the dudes that run this, the cadre, they like study this stuff, right? So obviously on the NATO side, we know how that works because we all did it. But like when the guys were like, hey, I want to do cadre for Rus War, they research like Russian strategy and tactics. And then that's how they try and fight these events, is how the Russians would fight these events. So it's pretty in-depth. You get like op orders or operations orders given to you before the event that break down like the conditions and terrain and weather and all that stuff and the enemy and everything. It's crazy, man. It's very realistic.
I could picture it being a turnoff to someone that's like not military trained or anything. And like, I'm a civilian. I was not.
You don't have to have the military training, but I kind of get what you're saying. People quit every time I've done it. People quit.
Because they don't like the order or the structure?
It's more just because they're like, you mean we don't get to like sleep all through the night and stuff like that? And they basically like
they whine themselves out.
They whine themselves out of it, right? Or they go into it expecting it to be like okay, cool, we'll play airsoft in the day and then at night we'll all sleep and do whatever. And you're like, no, dude, we're running operations until 3 a.m. Mom says I got to be home before the streetlights come on or whatever. No, it doesn't work that way, man. You're going full speed. So a lot of people, some will come out and they'll be like, I'm not prepared for this. Or they'll be like, cool, I'm ready to do 40 hours, you know? But they don't bring like any rain gear to an event where it's going to rain for 2 days. And so then they're like soaked and they're miserable and they quit because they've never been in those situations in real life. And that to me is where this comes in as a really good training opportunity for you. If you've never legit run like 40-hour operations and fought in platoon and squad and company-sized elements, Milsim West is awesome because you get that experience. Even if you don't want to do it from that angle, you get the experience of like, man, I got to see if I can live out of my backpack for 40 hours straight.
Yeah.
Right? It's
and
awesome
like 40
for that.
hours sounds easy because you're at home most of the time. But like the most I've done is like 24-hour races where you're just running or walking for 24 hours.
Yeah, this is 40 hours where you are you're just out and the only things you have to live off of are things that you are carrying on your person.
Especially like 18 hours in of consistent movement, it gets tough because you're tired, hungry, and uncomfortable. So.
Yeah, you would definitely be fine, but the people like you aren't doing these things. You're physically tough and in shape.
I want to do it.
Right?
I just don't want to spend money on another hobby.
Well, so you wouldn't have to. If you want to try one of these things, we can talk about this off camera, but you can borrow all this crap, man.
Yeah.
I'm happy to let people do that.
I'd want to go
do
it with you.
So. Yeah, absolutely. I have enough friends and enough people that you can borrow all this crap to just try it, and then if you really like it, then you get another expensive hobby. That's what I did. Like, my friend let me borrow this, and now I'm buying an AK because I'm like, shit, man, being a Russian was way more fun.
So you'll get the AK, I borrow your AR?
Yeah, because I have a 416 airsoft gun. That's real metal, and it's licensed by HK.
That's cool.
Right, so
it sounds fun, guys. Like, I've been wanting to do this. It's just... Like, for me, everything is time, money, taking time off work. Cause,
you never do that.
I still do mud runs. I still do other events. So it's hard to, like, want to do shooting events throughout the year, want to do mud run events throughout the year, want to pick up this throughout the year. Like, it sounds a lot of fun.
You got a lot of busy schedule.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend it, guys. It's a great training tool. It's a good way for you to get out there. And you can test all of your gear except, like, your gun, obviously, because you're using an airsoft gun. But if you want to put your real optic on it and see how that does when it's 30 degrees and raining for 3 days or 40 hours, your night vision, make sure that works and stuff. And thermals are great. It's an awesome place to test all this equipment and to test your tactics, especially if you go do it with friends. If you can get a squad of dudes together, you can stay together as a squad with just your friends. And so if you have a training group, for example, that you go out and you're like, we're ready for the Civil War II or whatever, and you do training in the desert where you do live fire, mag dumping into trash, or shooting at static targets on a range, I would challenge you to do this with your friends where you're fighting people who don't want to get shot and also want to kill you, because it doesn't get much more realistic short of joining the military and shooting sims at each other and stuff like that, or actually, going to war, which sucks. Right, so it's a really great way to train.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun.
The only other thing I had to mention, since we got off topic, so this is going to be kind of out of order. The other element to the team thing, and this I guess sort of can answer your question too. There's Rus 4 and there's NATO, but on Rus 4 there's also what's called Militia.
Okay. And
so Militia, if you guys don't know, the Russians use a lot of like improvised sort of paramilitary type organizations to help them fight. We're not just talking about Wagner, the famous PMC, but also like local militias. Like, for example, the whole beginning of the war in Ukraine when it was just the Donetsk autonomous region or whatever rebels, which we now know were really Russians, but they also had just random people that lived there that were like, yeah, we want to fight the Ukrainians and be our own country. So they just like picked up their grandpa's AK that they'd had since whatever, because, a lot of these Eastern European places, there's just AKs everywhere, right? They would just grab that stuff. They'd grab maybe they were in the military when they were a conscript in the 70s or whatever, so they'd grab their old jacket and throw it on and maybe a backpack with some water bottles and some I don't know, fish head soup or whatever the Russians eat. And then they were just out there fighting. And that's realistic. That's what happens a lot, you know, improvised kind of insurgent style fighting forces essentially, right? So this militia covers that. So the cool part about militia is you don't have to invest in a bunch of cool Russian tactical camouflaging gear or a bunch of cool NATO camouflaging gear, because in militia you can wear pretty much whatever you want. They have requirements like the only camouflage that you can use is like woodland BDU camouflage.
Okay.
So you can wear woodland, but you can also wear like Ranger Green uniforms. You could wear regular civilian clothes basically to do that, and whatever chest rig you have, and like a rifle, they just place limits on it. Like for example, when I used this gun for that militia, because I did militia last time, right? I couldn't have all these attachments on it. You could have one attachment. So I took the can off and I took the purse off and I just ran it with an optic. They do that to kind of limit it because they don't want you to be like some random militia peasant dude's not going to have a purse and a can and all this other stuff, right? He's going to have like a sling maybe, right? And if he's really lucky, he's going to have some kind of holosun or some cheap optic that he found on Amazon or something. So they place limits on it to make it more realistic. So if you just want to try these things, militia is a great way to do it. You can also use, even if you want to do militia, you can still use like an M4 AR style gun or whatever, right? If you want to. So they make like
Rust 4 side?
Yeah, if you're militia, only if you're militia. But if you're like Rust 4, your weapons have to be legit. So like you can only use weapons the Russian military uses. Same thing for NATO. If you're NATO, you can only use weapons that NATO forces use. So you can't use an AK if you're NATO, and you can't use an M4 if you're Russian. I understand that you can find exceptions to that in real life, but for the sake of the game, right? That's just how it works.
Sense.
Obviously, there are NATO countries that use AKs. I know that, right? But for the purposes of this thing, you know, they don't want to. They want to limit that thing. And then another part of this that's really interesting, and the only anecdotal story that I will tell about my personal experience there, was just to kind of give you an idea of how realistic it is. Your identify friend and foe stuff is based on the camo they're wearing, and it's up to you. They're not going to be like, hey, I'm this guy or whatever. Like when things get confused and the fighting happens, people won't be like, hey, dude, stop shooting me. I'm on the same team as you or whatever. You know, but you have to have those things, right? So we have a challenge and password that you have to know, and if it gets compromised, you have to change it because otherwise they can sneak up on you. And at night, obviously, like it doesn't, man, you can't.
That'd be hard.
This versus multicam at night under nods, nah, man, it's really hard to tell. So like the only anecdotal experience I had while I was there that I will share with you was that we did some fighting at this intersection, right? It was very cool, very, very dynamic and disruptive. And then after it was kind of over, people started like, we were just kind of talking with each other, even though we were on opposite teams. When we were dead, you just have to lay there. So we're just talking to each other. And then we kind of come back alive. And so we're talking, and then like a unit comes down this street and they're walking in a staggered column down the road. They're super chill though. They see us standing there and they don't do anything or say anything. So they get right up to us and we're all this close to each other. You know, there's like 3 dudes in front of me. And then there's me, and we're all standing here talking. And this is an airsoft gun, understand?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
We're standing here talking to each other, and these guys are like, "Yeah, man, this is really fun. This is my first one I've ever done." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you know, it's cool. I've done a couple of these." And they're like, "Yeah, I'm just super glad I signed up for NATO this time, you know, because I'm having a really good time doing this." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you guys are doing NATO stuff? Yeah, that's really cool, man." And like as he said NATO, I was like, "Oh, that's really neat, dude." And I flipped the safety selector to full auto, and he's like, "Yeah, how many times have you done NATO?" And I'm like, "I'm not NATO." And then I went, and I sprayed all 3 of these dudes from the hip with my airsoft gun. No, because it's pitch dark outside. 2 of them didn't have nods. Only one of their friends did, and so they didn't know that I was Rust 4. And so I just like murked these 3 dudes point blank. But then of course, the 12 dudes behind them covered me in BBs, and I died right there on the spot.
You didn't survive the whole fight?
Yeah.
The whole 40
No.
hours?
Well, obviously, and you keep coming back, right? So I think total in that event, I died maybe 3 times or something like that. Some people, if you're really aggressive, you do more. If you're not aggressive, you do less. I don't get joy out of this.
You're not a camper?
No. But I'm also not like a running through doors. I'm getting old. I don't do that stuff anymore, right? I don't get joy from playing the game by like running and gunning through houses and being the individual guy that's killing all these dudes and stuff like that. I have fun because I enjoy leading people, and so I like being the guy that's like kind of back there being like, hey, you know, this team deploy here, you guys deploy here, you go this way, we'll do an L-shaped ambush and whatever. I like that. I also like giving these younger people that do it the military experience that they may not have gotten. And so like at the beginning of this event, I ask the 2 events I've done, my friend John's like, hey man, you do whatever. Like just tell people you speak with my voice, so you know they have to listen to you. And so I'll be like, hey, listen, how many of you guys have been in the military? Maybe 1 or 2 people raise their hand, but most people haven't. And I'm like, do you guys want me to treat you like soldiers for this event so you get the experience, or do you want me to treat you like people here playing a game? And both the times I did this,
the right way to do it.
both the time I did this, though, the people were like, oh, dude, treat us just like in the military. So I was like, all right, then that's how we'll do it. And so I kind of give them that experience of like, if they screw up, I might yell at them a little bit and, you know, cuss at them some stuff and scream when fighting starts, be like yelling and doing tactics. If they're like, no, I'm just here to play a game, then whatever, do your own thing, man, I don't care. But the people that are there, they want that kind of experience. That's what they pay the money for.
How much
so it's
is
fun
this
to give it.
too, by the way?
I think it's like, don't quote me on it, man.
Yeah.
Again, I don't work for them. It's like $200 to $300, I think. It depends on when you sign up to. If you do it really early, it's cheaper. If you do it last minute, it's more expensive.
Is this like well, you said there's a couple different events, but each event, right?
They do them all over the U.S. too.
Okay.
Because
Is there like, at each spot, is it normally once a year, twice a year?
I think they try and do it once. They play like a season, basically, essentially.
Okay.
And so they have a story in between games, too, that's ongoing, which is kind of neat. So you can have an effect on like the little story they do. But I really only do the California events because I'm not committed enough to this to fly on a plane to go do it. So I do the events that I can drive to. Right now, there are 2 California events that are like within an 8-hour drive of me. That's the Victorville event and the Clovis event that they do. They do one event twice at the same, or they do one event at the same place twice, but it's different. The first time it's like war, and the second time it's called an insurgency event, which is where they play at like the Global War on Terror, where there's literally civilians. Like, you pay money to play this game, but you choose to be a civilian, which is weird to me, right? But people do it. And it's sort of like a party, but there's a little fighting. So there's like a small Russian force and a small NATO force, but most of the players there are playing as regular people in a war-torn Middle Eastern country or some third world country in Eastern Europe or whatever. They have like, they set up businesses. People will bring like hot dogs and a grill, and they will be like grilling hot dogs and selling them to people
just pretending to be a civilian?
Yeah, basically. Just pretending to run a business. They have nightclubs that people set up where they're like, they run nightclubs, and people bring, like I said, they'll bring like cigarettes and sell them, trade them for BBs or whatever, because BBs are like the currency there, because as a civilian, you don't get a lot of ammo because you're a civilian, so you might get like 1 magazine's worth. And so to them, it's valuable to have more ammo. So they'll be like, hey, we're cooking hot dogs that we all bought, and we set up a restaurant, and so it's like 15 BBs or whatever if you want a hot dog or something. So this is actually really cool, which is neat. They also have scenarios set up in that, so there's like a president and there's an election going on and all this stuff, and it's really cool and very in depth, right? I haven't done one of those yet, but I will absolutely be doing the one they're doing in 2025, because I think they did the one for this year already, because it just sounds really cool to me. I'm actually going to be doing that one as HOA enforcement as the business.
Is there any decent events here in Arizona?
They don't. Milsim West doesn't do an Arizona event yet. No. The closest thing, that American Milsim does one in New Mexico, but honestly, it's about the same, about 6 to 8 hour drive, depending on where you go. So yeah, unfortunately right now, guys, California is kind of the venue we have to go to. If you live on the East Coast, they do a bunch of stuff on the East Coast too, but they do 3 events that I know of for sure in California, and they're all within an 8-hour drive of Arizona. So if you're going with your boys, it's easy. You guys carpool, drive up there, you know, whatever, no big deal. So
I think it'd be cool. Have you ever seen that airsoft sniper in like Europe?
Oh yeah, that does stuff like that. You can use sniper rifles. They just have
like
rules
5
for it.
feet from someone and not have them see me. That's so cool.
You can absolutely try that stuff for sure, right? That's a good place to see if the cheap Amazon uniform you bought is IR resistant or not. You'll know real quick when you get out there.
Twigs and stuff in my helmet.
Yeah, because camo's a real thing. You don't want to get seen by the bad guys. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So that's really all I have. I'm sure this video's already been way too long.
It's all good.
Our camera woman looks bored, so we will end it there. If you guys have questions about this stuff, please ask me. Again, I don't work for them, though. You'd be better off.
He has passion about it, though. It's
You'd be better off just going on their website to look up information, but I will try and answer questions for you if you have them. And then also, if you do decide to do these things, you can pick who you serve with, basically, when you sign up for these things, right? So the way it works is like there's a Facebook page. When you sign up, you get access to the Facebook page, and then the cadre kind of pick people to be their soldiers, essentially. So if you want to do that and you want to run into me there when you're doing it, you want to look for my friend John, who runs a platoon on there. You'll see him on there. And you can sign up to literally like do this with me and do this with John and be in our like little squad or whatever. So it's pretty cool. We met a good group of kids who were like a team that does it. So we try and pull as many of them
If
as we
there's
can.
another one coming up soon, I will try to make it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's worth it for sure.
But thank you guys for watching. I hope this was interesting. Airsoft, I know it can seem like a toy to most people. For me, for the longest time, it did. But the more I've watched videos on this stuff and heard people talk about
There's definitely training value in it.
It definitely sounds fun. And
I promise you, the Milsim West stuff is not what you think of when you think of Airsoft.
Yeah. No, and this feels pretty legit in the fact that you can throw your own stuff on there. But yeah, thank you for being on the channel, and thanks for talking about this stuff.
Absolutely.
I look forward to learning more about it.
Sweet.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for the next video.